If you're ready to maximize your free time, deal less with the stresses of the day, and really get on with savoring every minute of your life after your career, then you're in the right place. Great ideas, tips, and inspiration to help make your life after all that work stuff richer, fuller, and more of what you want. This is Smart Retirement Life.
Hi, this is Mark Hager, and you're listening to Smart Retirement Life, a show where we talk about ideas, products, people, and more to help keep you inspired as you continue to create the life that you want. Now, today I'm thrilled to be joined by Leonard Baer, an attorney whose practice focuses on elder law, specifically protecting seniors and their families from financial fraud and abuse. As a practicing attorney, he has been selected for inclusion in the Baer Register of Preeminent Lawyers, a registry of the top 5% of all attorneys practicing in the United States, as well as one of North Carolina's top-rated lawyers. He has given talks to various groups across the country on financial abuse of the elderly and has testified before the Senate Subcommittee on Aging in Washington, D.C. Now, Mr. Baer is a biweekly columnist for the Highlander, the Crossroads Chronicle, and the Clayton Tribune newspapers, and writes a biweekly syndicated blog called As I See It, right here on ageandplace.com. Now, Mr. Baer practices in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, New York, and Washington, D.C. Hi, Lenny, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Mark, hi, and thank you for having me, and I look forward to talking with you.
You know, I was really excited that you agreed to come on the show. I'm just super stoked to have you here with us. I know we've had the opportunity to talk on the phone before and email back and forth quite a bit, but nothing takes place of a good conversation. Now, I know that listeners don't have my perspective since they've never talked with you before, but folks, I want to tell you, you don't run into people that are so passionate about what they do every day. And Lenny, he's definitely one of those people. He just has a real heart to serve and really cares about the families and individuals that he works with. He's had an incredible career already, but from my perspective, he's moving into an even better part of his service and purpose in his life. Now, Lenny, why don't you tell us about your work?
Well, Mark, first of all, that was a very nice introduction. As you indicated before, I am an elder law attorney, and elder law attorneys' practices focus primarily on issues dealing with estate planning, retirement planning, issues with nursing home abuses, Medicare, Medicaid. There's a variety of things, and then there's a subset that I really have found myself involved in over the past probably 7 or 8 years, which is trying to protect families, trying to protect seniors from elder fraud, whether it be what we call exterior elder fraud, which is the scams, or interior elder fraud, which basically comes as a result of families, or not families, but caregiving, or people in a family that are in some way abusing an elder. And this is, as you say, I am passionate about this, which probably dates back to an earlier time when I was involved at the United States Attorney's Office. I was involved as the Major Crimes Deputy Chief, and I prosecuted boiler room scams, which, as you may remember, in the 80s and 90s was the equivalent in terms of the amount of fraud to what we now have on the Internet. And I remember that the people that I prosecuted, the salespeople, and I put that in air quotes, the salespeople just had no remorse about what they were doing. And as I may have said one time before, when asked and when I was questioning one, that individual said to me, if I leave one dime of my VIX money on the table, I haven't done my job. And it rang with me, continues to ring with me. But that's the passionate part is I don't want to see someone fraudulently abused.
Right. Well, I know that just, reading the news online and listening to the news on TV, you see elder fraud. I mean, and scamming has just become so rampant in our society. And a person doesn't really know what they should do. right? I mean, you don't, whether it's happened to you or not, or you're worried about a family member, it's overwhelming to think about all the different ways that somebody you care about could get taken advantage of.
Well, I think that's very true. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
It is very true. It is very true. It's an emotional crisis that I've found that takes place when a family member, a senior, someone is scammed in whatever way they are scammed. It generally involves the whole family at some point in time, and there's an emotional crisis that takes place. And as you said a few minutes ago, it's an epidemic now. We're talking about a $5 billion a year industry just in the United States.
Wow,
so
you're kidding.
It's an epidemic. And because you have an unlimited number of prospective victims, I mean, we are talking about, in terms of elderly or a population that's moving toward a senior population, we have people that are turning 10,000 people turning 65 every day for the next 15 to 18 years. You have an unlimited victim pool with very sophisticated means to scam them, with very sophisticated people on the other end who know how to scam, know what to say, how to say it, and what touches buttons.
Well, I've probably told you this before, but I've had someone in my family just one person that I know of, but at least one, who is older and who was scammed. It was rough. Not just the money, right? Because, she's on a fixed income, but it was really tough because, the first thing, as a family member, you're like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? Once you get beyond the shock of, a bunch of money being lost, but what does this mean in terms of this person, right? And their ability to continue to function in their life. Are they slipping or, do I need to step in? I mean, there's just so many questions that you go through. And you're right, it is very emotionally draining. And it's hard to know which direction that you should turn. So before we get into specifics about, steps you should take and stuff like that, there's one thing I really want to make sure we cover, and that is, you said you spent time in the working in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and you worked with these boiler room scams. But what happened in your career that made you want to focus on just this?
I think that when it's like anything else, sometimes when you see something many years ago, it sticks with you. And maybe when I was doing this, because I was younger, it stuck with me, but maybe at that point in my life, I wasn't seeing it on a regular basis. And as we all know,
right,
the definite is we get older. And when we get older, our friends get older. And when our friends are getting older, other people are getting older, and then all of a sudden, I started to see this again. I started to see it recurring with some of my friends, with people that would call on me, and it just became something that kind of reared itself back up. It kind of lit the fuse again, that I'm back into this fight. I had a fight when I was a prosecutor. I was representing the people of the United States, or when I was a state attorney, I was representing the people of the state of Florida. All of a sudden, that cause again came up. I saw, as you had just mentioned in your own family, you see the devastation, and you see this, so many ways that this is affecting a family. That if there's not some kind of advocacy here, then it just doesn't go away. Those people are scarred. Those people don't get better, for want of a better word, and it just came back. All of a sudden, something sparked it. Really, in my life, what sparked it was a client who then became a friend who I saw go through a very, very tough situation, and it kind of lit that fuse again.
Well, actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. My next question was going to be, why don't you tell us about someone that you've helped in this capacity? Obviously, you can leave out names or anything that would identify them. But tell us a story about how you've been able to help someone get through a case of elder fraud or get through being taken advantage of in some way.
Well, it probably is an appropriate time, because what started was someone involved in what's called the IRS scam. And again, it's probably topical now. I've written about it, and of course we're in the season of we are in tax preparing season right now. But about 8 or 9 years ago, I got a call from the client, and I'll just call the client Jack, and Jack called me, must have been about 11:30 at night, and he was hyperventilating. He was between crying and hyperventilating. He had told me that he had just come out from being with some friends, and Jack at this point in his life was a widower, so he was alone. And he had just come back from a party, and on his recording on his telephone, there was a message that he owed a little over $3,800 in taxes, and if he didn't pay this immediately, the federal authorities were going to be called, and he was going to be arrested for tax fraud. And this is, again, the circumstances are that he was 8 months a widower, going through some very tough times. His family was not living close to him, and he was just starting to emotionally come back from the shock of losing his wife. And all he kept saying on the phone was, am I going to go to jail? I can't go to jail, and I don't have this money. I said to him, listen, Jack, I don't want you to worry about this. I am going to handle this. Well, what are you going to do, Mr. Baer? I'm going to handle it. I said, you do not have to worry about it. I will call you in the morning, and I will take care of this thing for you. And then, again, he said, gee, am I going to have to go to jail? And he said, I don't think my family could bear this. We hung up, and, of course, I knew what exactly had happened. About 8:30 or 9 o'clock the next morning, I called him, and he said, Mr. Baer, Lenny, is this you? I said, yes, Jack. And he said, am I going to go to jail? And I said, absolutely not. You don't owe anything. This whole thing was a scam meant to frighten you and to make you do something that you did not need to do. And you could just hear on the other end this relief. I couldn't certainly see him, but I could feel his body kind of unstressing or de-stressing.
Oh, yeah.
And what was interesting is I don't think he quite got it, except his last words to me on that phone call were, so I don't have to go to jail.
Wow.
This really, it kind of angered me.
Oh, yeah.
I knew him. Like I said, he was becoming more of a friend while still a client. But I said to myself, how many people are getting the same phone call? How many people are reaching out? But then how many people are sitting all night listening to a phone conversation, probably over and over again, that they're going to go to jail? And what has this done to them, or what is this doing to them? How are they going to recognize what it truly is? How embarrassed are they going to even talk about it with anybody? So I think if I look at that pivotal point, that's the pivotal point.
Wow. Well, that's actually a good segue into, these families who get those kind of calls from a parent or have those conversations with a parent or discover that somebody has taken advantage of an older parent. And then, once that shock wears off, right, there's lots of emotion involved in that and indecision, right, not sure what to do. But What should these people do?
Well, I'll tell you one thing in the beginning that they shouldn't do, and one thing they should not do is become so emotional with their parent to make their parent feel like they were 3 years old. Because I think sometimes the children become very reactive. They're mad, they're upset, they're worried, and what ends up happening, though, is the focal point of that rage focuses on their parents. Mm-hmm. That's the worst situation and the worst combination of things that can happen. It's hard to diffuse that, even if the child says later, or whomever the relative is, like, gee, mom or dad or grandpa, I'm sorry I said that. You know, it's like the internet. Once it's out there, it's out there. Excuse me.
And you know, that's especially true. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's especially true if, you know, there's not any warning signs, right? Because a lot of people,
exactly
there's so many caregivers right in the United States right now, millions and millions and millions, and a lot of these folks, they've had indicators, right, that maybe mom or dad is not quite like they used to be, forgetting things, whatever, you know, or misplacing things, or not even being able to make a good decision here or there, or whatever the case may be. There's these indicators, but for the millions and millions of other people who have never displayed that, right? It's a shock.
Well, it is a shock. It's something they haven't seen before. You know, when you premise your life that your parent, your father and mother, are these are the people you've respected. These are the people that you've honored. These are the people that you want to, in many cases, you want to follow and be like them. When this happens, it kind of tests all the things that you grew up with and think about. But again, the issue here is not to make the parents, not to make the senior the focal point of that. The things that you can do, because now this is the first sign or an indication that maybe there's a problem, is you start to check with the parent about, let's say, their checking account or some of the bills. You start to look for signs that there may be some diminishment, there may be some type of issues. But you, again, if there's one thing that I ask the family members, who generally are the people that call me first, is to try to lower the emotional level, try not to make the parent feel diminished, less than, babied, someone that's being taken over. That's really the first things that need to be done. Then, of course, when you're aware of this, then you have to take a proactive action. You have to take some actions to see what is really happening. You start to look at the parent, your mother or father's house, or your grandpa's house, and are things kept in order? Are things put away? Are bills piling up? Are newspapers? I mean, there are, interestingly, the evidence of these problems are generally not disguised. You walk into someone's home, and I walk into a client with the family's home, and I see it's easy to see that there are issues. Then the next step is, how are we going to deal with these issues? How are we going to help the senior? What are we going to do? How are we going to make that person still feel important to themselves, but yet how can we help and prevent this problem? I mean, it becomes almost kind of not only a legal issue, because many times there are legal channels that we can focus on, but it's an emotional, psychological issue. Absolutely. And that's really...
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go on, Mark.
I was just going to say that, and the truth is there's so much gray area there, right? Just because someone fell for a scam doesn't mean they're, in the first stages of dementia, right? Or they need constant supervision. It can, let's be really truthful about it. Anybody can be scammed. It's not just old folks. That just happens to be the people that we're talking about, right? It's not, anybody can do that. And
look at these. And you're dealing with some very high level salespeople using some very, very sophisticated tools to find them out. And to answer your question, absolutely not. Scams can be put over on people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and that's not unusual. Can even be against someone in their 20s. I think that what becomes problematic is that seniors fall into a situation which makes them prone to answering the phones from people they don't know, looking at something on the internet and they don't know what it is and they'll follow through. Some seniors are on various type of chat rooms or even dating sites. I think it isn't a question of being how old you are, but I think it's simply the focus of scammers seems to be on people of a particular age. And believe it or not, there's information out there that is available to the scammers, knowing the market that they're contacting, knowing the age of the people. You would be surprised how much material is available illegally out there that puts people on lists to be phoned, to be called.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah. Wow.
It's just a very sophisticated business, and the other side to this is that generally, not always, but generally, many seniors are in an emotional part of their life where they're more prone maybe to answering a phone or answering an ad than someone who is 40 years old. That doesn't mean it happens. It happens to anybody at any age. It's just the group that I deal with would be an ideal group for scammers to be involved with, simply because out of 10 people, maybe 4 or 5 of those people are suffering from not dementia, but some emotional imbalance in their life. A partner or a wife or a husband is sick. A child may be going through something. A grandchild may be going through something. Their emotional stability may not be as good as it used to be, and maybe that their ability to integrate with other people is not as great, so that they don't have the opportunity to talk about this to friends like maybe they did when they were 30 or 40.
Wow. Bless your heart, Lenny. I tell you, I'm so glad there's people out there like you that are
I appreciate
out there
that.
helping folks. It just breaks my heart to even think about this stuff. So to get back where we were, let's say that, this happened and somebody's been scammed, and, a daughter or son has come in and they've done some checking, kind of figured out what's happened. Maybe it was a scam phone call, or they, gave out a bunch of money or whatever. At what point should they contact an attorney like you? What should their steps be?
I think that at that point where they start to see some things happening, when they see that there has been money depleted from their parents' checking or savings account or whatever type of investment accounts, I think at that point in time is the time when I generally find myself getting called in, because the child, and I'll just use it in the scenario of a child and his parent. The child has now seen that money has gone, so obviously money has either been stolen or their parent is giving it away. And at that point in time is generally when I have gotten calls. The family want me to become involved. Many times I'll actually meet with a family either at my office or, in some cases, especially when I'm in my office in North Carolina, which is in a smaller area, I'll actually go to the homes of the parents with the children. We'll talk about the situation. I want to see exactly what they have found, whether this is something on a constant basis. There's a point. There's a point where I start making recommendations that we may need to get the police involved. I want a police report. Because my background comes out of law enforcement, I feel very comfortable talking to the police, talking to the district attorney's office or state attorney's office. In the case in North Carolina, or in a few cases in North Carolina, have talked to the FBI. At a point where they see an issue that they can't merely solve as being, well, mom is just slipping a little bit, but nothing really has taken place, versus there's something substantial going on. We know it, we see it, we feel it. It's the quacking of the duck situation. When you feel it or hear it and think it's really there, that's the time that I'm generally called in. And it's not also being called in necessarily to fix the problem, but it's to prevent further problems, to try to come up with some type of solution, if necessary to call the police, if necessary to change phone numbers, to put people on do not call lists. There are several things that can be done, even to engage the children with the Department of Senior Services so that there's some monitoring going on. But again, the kids kind of sense when there's more going on than simply a slippage. There's going to be slippage.
Beyond being a voice of comfort and reason, right, and someone they can lean on during that time, which, in terms of fraud of any kind or any type of illegal activity like that, having an attorney there, that's always a good thing. But even in this particular case, right, where you're someone and your colleagues throughout the United States are people who specialize in working with older folks, and you're bringing to the table additional skill sets, right, additional knowledge that maybe a general attorney might not have. And
well, that's what that is what I've found, actually. I because I do a lot of writing now, because I've done a tremendous amount of public speaking on the issues, I will get calls from other attorneys, and sometimes it's not even in a jurisdiction that I practice in, but it's in a jurisdiction saying, can I run something by you? What would you think I should do here? So, it's being available, knowing that the resource exists, and as you just said a few moments ago, I think what a family needs to have is a calmness taking place amidst this terrible emotional confusion. They need to see someone coming in that they feel that they can put the problem on, take it off their table, take it on, and come up with a solution. Doesn't mean I'm always going to come up with every solution, but at least at the moment, the idea behind it is to at least put forward a sense of calmness, because that is, again, and not to be redundant, but that, again, what I see here is this emotional reactivity by children that they have to put their parent now in a nursing home, they have to take over writing all the bills, they have to, all of a sudden, the parent becomes the baby, because this to the child becomes the easiest solution. And it's not the right solution. Sometimes it is. In most times, it's not the right solution. So if there's a third party that may be a little bit more objective and has seen or done this before.
And lend some support. Because, sometimes, like you said, they just need somebody to stand in the gap, right, to hold that
exactly
burden
what
for
they
them
want.
for a little while.
They just want to feel that they're not alone. And sometimes that's also what you see with the parents. Not the parents, but the children of the parents, that you see that they start to fall into this emotional hole that they believe they're the only ones this has happened to. And, oh my gosh, now, what's happening to dad or mom? What are we going to do? I mean, it's a total family dynamics that takes place here. The hurt is overwhelming. And again, it kind of lit that fuse when I talked to one of these salespeople in the boiler rooms. Somebody on the other end is out to take them for every dime, and the emotional devastation is of no interest to them. This is how these scammers make their money.
Well, we've talked a bunch already about the issues and what families can do if it happens to them. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would like to also talk a little bit, conversely, to what do you do once it's happened, and flip that over and say, what can you do to keep it from happening?
Certainly it's difficult. It's like telling someone, how do you prevent a robbery from taking place?
Yeah.
Sometimes things are. Sometimes you're in a parking lot and that happens. But like the other thing is being proactive. How do you prevent people from breaking in and taking your belongings? Well, you put up an alarm system in your house. You lock your doors at night. What you do with parents is be in a regular relationship or be in communication. Listen for things. When you visit, look for things, and ask in a very kind of low, unemotional tone. Are there any things, Mom or Dad, you would like me to do? Can I help you with something? Be aware. And what I tell the family on a regular basis is, be aware of these things. When you are out, and it doesn't even happen to you, you can be aware and not even have it happen to your own family. Be aware of other people you meet. If you go to church, you go to synagogue, you go to a mosque, wherever you go and worship, start to look at various things. People that you know, older people, are there changes taking place? I've done a lot of work with and a lot of public speaking before doctors and their staffs. And interestingly, doctors are almost one of the first group of people that notice when there is elder fraud taking place, because they'll start to see things with a client, with a patient, that are a little bit out of the ordinary. They'll see a caregiver possibly come in, and that caregiver may be a relative or a third party who's not related, but taking over the conversation and talking about medications and talking about various things. And some of the trainings that I've done for physicians have to be, it's basically being alert for certain things. People in business being alert for some changes taking place, being banks, looking at their clients, looking at the people that come in and do banking. There are things that are out there. It's like everything else, if you are being more aware of what's going out there rather than being unaware of everything, you're going to start to see things. And as I mentioned before, going into a parent's house and seeing a disheveled condition of the parent or newspapers piling up, you would be surprised when you start to look at things, what you're going to notice. And that's what I tried to get across in some of the speaking engagements that I have. If you look out there, you're going to find some things. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. That doesn't mean that there's a problem. But it means that there should be some kind of a follow-up. If you see it in a church, talk to the pastor or talk to the rabbi or whomever. If it's a business situation and you're working in a bank, talk to a supervisor. There are signs. There are signs. It's just being more aware.
In terms of, a lot of the people that listen to this show, right, they're in their late 50s, maybe mid-60s and beyond. Maybe they're not dealing with their parents. Maybe they want to help protect themselves, right, to make sure that they don't get taken advantage of, either through these, phone scams or internet scams. What are some things they can do to protect themselves?
First of all, I tell groups that are of that particular age, number one, you get yourself on a do not call list. I mean, that is very, very important. Most everyone has caller IDs. I am sure there are still people out there that have phones plugged into the wall, but most of the people have caller ID. If you don't recognize the caller, you don't pick up the phone call.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, when you're on the internet, if you don't know the site you're on, you don't go to it. Banks, as I tell people, because that's become a very prolific area of scamming, where you will see a bank, and it may be even the bank you bank in, saying, go to this site, we're updating our information. I tell clients, if there's an issue that you think is your bank, then call your bank. You don't do anything online. I'm very, probably sometimes the internet issues that are innocuous, but I tell clients, frankly, I do not respond, and I don't want you to respond to anything that asks for any information, updated information. If Google calls you, or AOL writes you, or Gmail writes you and say, we are updating our account, you don't respond. It's simply do not respond. Do not respond on the phone. Do not respond online. That's the major thing. If you got people to focus on those two issues, I would imagine you would cut down on a great deal of fraud. But people see a bank and it says that there's been a problem with your bank account. They'll go to it. They'll go to the site. They're hacked. They're on lists. You're on a list forever. And that's another thing I tell my clients, unfortunately. Once you're on a list, once you're on a scam list, once you've picked up or you've answered a phone call, you're on a list. That list can be resold 10 times, but you're on a list, and you want to stay off that list.
Very, very good advice. Thank you so much for that. So, in terms of what you've got coming down the pike, what's going to be happening with you in the next, 6 months to a year that you're excited about?
Well, I think I'm excited about the amount of speaking that I'm doing. It seems that between people reading my articles in the newspaper, reading my articles in blogs, heard me talk before, word of mouth gets around, and then I think what happens is that what I'm finding is that a lot of different sources are calling me to speak about these issues. It's also led to some various companies have asked me to come in and do 2 or 3 hour training sessions with their employees. So I think what excites me is that there is an interest in trying to prevent this, number one, and the recognition that this is a problem not just for someone else's family, but it's a problem that comes into our own business office. And as I tell businesses, the reason a business should be interested, the reason a doctor should be interested, a realtor or a banker is because, frankly, the practical matter is at some point in time you may become liable somehow as being facilitating the fraud. If someone keeps coming into a bank and cashing checks, or comes in with someone and that someone looks suspicious and you continue to cash checks, and you may be facilitating part of this fraud, and could become personally liable or could become financially liable. It behooves the business, if they only looked at it from the standpoint of money that they could save by not having to pay out in lawsuits, it's let's get some training. Let's start to understand this problem that is a problem, could extend to our business, could become part of a problem in our business. We don't want a problem in our business. So in the picture here that I'm excited about is a recognition that this is not a problem that happens to someone else's mom and dad, but it's a problem that could happen in our own business. We better be aware of it. We better know what to do, who to call, and what actions we need to take.
Absolutely. Well, and, all that, and including just from a perspective of the level of service that you're providing, not just to your individual customers, but to your community at large, that you're aware and you're helping care for the people that maybe your customers are caring for, or the people who are your customers. You're helping their families by keeping an eye out for things like that. And it's, that says a lot about a company, and definitely it speaks to the character of the people who run an establishment to have that level of commitment to the people.
It is, and I'm seeing that. And I'm seeing that more and more, and that obviously gives me a good feeling that the message is getting through. They see it as a problem, not only a problem that can affect them financially, but they see it as a problem out there. And yes, we'd like to step in and help it. We don't want to see someone taken advantage of. It's no different than seeing someone being muscled or robbed in a parking lot. If you're unable to help them physically, you call 911. We don't just walk away. We don't just drive away. We take some action, and that's what I try to get across to businesses, and they've understood it. We can take some action to help, and they're willing to do that, and that's a very gratifying thing, because when you see people not directly involved with some of this fraud and scam getting involved and thinking that it's important, well, then it kind of makes my job. It's a feel good for what I do.
Exactly. Well, obviously, you don't practice in every state, right? How can people get a lawyer like you on their team?
Well, I think that there are a lot of elder law attorneys that have at least a certain amount of knowledge in this particular area. I'm not saying I'm the only one in the country that does this. There are probably many. I think the first thing that if there is a problem like this is basically go to some search site that is authentic for someone who practices elder law attorney. As an elder law attorney, you go to their website, you make a phone call, and you talk about these issues and ask questions and see whether or not the people you're talking to really have an understanding of that. I think I lean toward that because of a law enforcement background. That probably makes me a little bit different than some of the elder law attorneys out there practicing that don't have this. But it doesn't mean they don't have the knowledge to at least take the first steps. It's a question of getting on the phone and asking questions of an elder law attorney, or frankly any attorney. You're going to want to know what these folks know about the area, what they've done in the area. It's just part of their practice. You get a feel for it. There are people that do this out there, and I am sure there are some very, very capable people that can practice in various states.
Excellent. Well, Lenny, before we get out of here, why don't you tell folks how they can learn more about your work and get in touch with you?
I think if they go to my website, they'll find out a little bit more about me, and I'll give you that now. It's www.legalbaer, which is Legal, B as in boy, A-E-R, Baer being my last name, .com. And on that site, it also gives my email address. It also gives my phone numbers. And it doesn't matter where they're located, because I certainly will answer calls. I'll try to help people even if they call me in states I don't practice in. If they need recommendations to find a lawyer in a different state, I'll help them with that too. This is something I will definitely help people. They just have to reach out to me, even if they have a simple question.
Excellent. Well, Lenny, I just want to thank you again for being with us today. This has been fascinating and very full of information. I know that people are going to get a lot out of it, and I'm so thankful that you took the time to talk with us.
I am glad to do that. I enjoyed the conversation, and thank you, Mark.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it, straight from a lawyer. Get yourself and your life in order. Do this for yourself and your family, and make sure to be aware of things that are happening either in your own life or in the life of a loved one, your parent or a grandparent. Just keep an eye out to make sure that there's nothing going awry where they may be getting taken advantage of. And again, like Lenny said, if you'd like to learn more, you can visit his website at www.legalbaer.com. That's legalbaer.com. I'll include links to his website in this post. And until next time, this is Mark Hager, and you've been listening to Smart Retirement Life. All right, well, that was awesome.
I'm glad we had a redo, and I'm glad it worked out as well as it did.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad I brought up the proactive stuff. I didn't do that last time, and I think that's an important, additional point of addition.
Yeah, I think that is too, and that becomes really the focal point of it. When I do public speaking, I mean, obviously what people want to know is how do they protect themselves, just like anything else. How can I protect themselves against a robbery, against a burglary? How do I protect myself against fraud? And I think pointing out various things to be on the lookout will help a lot of people too.
All right. Well, I'm going to get this audio processed, and I will shoot you over some links. I'll check it tonight and just shoot you a link and say, hey, we're good, just so you don't have to worry about it.
That'd be great.
But I'll get it processed, and we'll get it posted, and I'll send you an email with links to it that you can share, and we'll share this just like I do everything else over the next 30 days once we get it published, and hopefully we'll get something good for you out of it. I appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. I enjoyed it. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, you have a great day, Lenny.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.